welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I will be teaching you how to crochet for absolute beginners, so I will go over everything you need to know. So let's start by showing the basic materials you need in order to crochet, and then I will go over the materials one by one. So it's important to have yarn, obviously. You will also need a hook, you will need stitch markers, and then you'll also need sewing needles and scissors. So these are the basic materials that you will use for pretty much every project. And if you don't have some of these, that's okay. I'll put links in my bio where you can purchase some. The main things that you need right now is just a hook and whatever yarn you'd like to use. Now let's talk about yarn. There are different types of yarn you can use. You can use acrylic, cotton, bamboo, wool. There's so many different kinds. For today, it doesn't matter what you use because we will just be practicing general stitches. So for me, I will be using acrylic yarn, which you can see here, it says acrylic. And I'm using the Loops and Threads brand, which is Michael's own brand. And in order to know what hook size you need, you will go and flip your yarn to the back, and you will see a number for the size yarn you're using. In the middle is for knitters, and to the right is for crocheters. So here we can see it says 5 millimeters, and it shows a hook symbol so that you know that's for crocheters. So then I will go ahead and grab a 5 millimeter hook, because that is what the yarn is recommending. And any yarn that recommends anywhere from 4 millimeters to 6 millimeters is usually a good start for beginners, so that is what I recommend to you. As for colors, do not use black yarn, or any dark yarn for that matter, because you will not be able to see your stitches. So use lighter colored yarns, and do not use any fluffy yarn either, because you also will not be able to see your stitches. So to get started, you need to find the end of your yarn, and I usually recommend a center pull because it will pull more smoothly as you're crocheting. So I will show you how to do that with this yarn because unfortunately I already did it with the other one. Now, unfortunately, there's not really right or wrong to this. You kind of just gotta reach into the middle of the yarn and feel around until you kind of snag onto a looser strand of yarn and then just pull. Sometimes you'll pull out a little yarn baby, which is what happens to me here. You'll see in a few seconds. But there's really no technique to this. And as you can see, here is my yarn baby, and it's giving me a bit of trouble, but using the center end is much easier than the outside end because the center end of the yarn just crochets more smoothly. And so even though it can be a hassle sometimes finding the center, it's definitely worth it when you're doing your project. So here is where I found the end of the yarn, and unfortunately I have my yarn baby, but it'll make it easier to crochet. But if for some reason you really can't find your center strand, or you just don't want to go through the hassle of finding it, in order to find the outside strand, it's much easier. So I would recommend taking off the wrapping around your yarn, and then usually the end of the strand you can just see sitting on the outside. So it's much easier to find, but it's more of a hassle to crochet with, whereas the center yarn is much harder to find but easier to crochet with. So you can just kind of take your pick of which you would rather do. So once you have your end, the next part would be grabbing your hook and holding it. And now there's really no right or wrong with how you hold your hook. Many people hold it like a pencil, like this. I personally do not know how people crochet like this, but if that's more comfortable for you, be my guest. I hold it like this, like a knife, because it's what's more comfortable for me. So no matter what, it's going to feel awkward at first. It's a new habit you're learning, so it feels very strange. So just go with whatever feels the least awkward way to hold it for you. As for holding the yarn, there is also no right or wrong way. I will attempt to demonstrate how I see many people holding it, as well as showing how I hold it. So go ahead and find the end of the yarn that you want to use and get ready because we're almost at the crocheting part. So how I see many people holding their working yarn is they wrap it around their index finger and hold their index finger up while crocheting. I do not use this way. As you can see here, I'm trying to figure out how people crochet like this. But essentially, they just have the yarn wrapped around their index finger in order to keep tension while they are crocheting. Another common way I see people hold their yarn is by wrapping it around their pinky finger in order to keep tension while they are crocheting. Again, just like I said for the hook, there's no right or wrong way. You kind of just will play around with the yarn until it feels the least awkward to you. So it's going to kind of just be like a trial and error situation until you get something that works for you. So now we're at the point where we can start crocheting, so go ahead and get your yarn and your hook ready and let's get started. We are going to start by learning how to make a slip knot, and this is pretty much just your basic knot that you're going to start with for almost every single project. So you'll start by picking up your yarn and you're going to wrap it around your non-dominant hand. So for me, this is my left hand. So I'm going to take the loose end and have it toward my palm, hold it in place, and then take the yarn around your first 2 fingers and wrap it around so that it creates an X in the front of your first 2 fingers. Then you'll go ahead and flip your fingers over, and I like to use my pinky to hold this end of the yarn, which is called the working yarn, just to make sure it's in place. This is the tail. I'm just showing you where it is so that you can make sure yours looks the same. And then you will go and pick up your hook, and you are going to put it under the first strand of yarn, which I am demonstrating here, hook onto the second strand of yarn, and then pull that underneath the first strand. Now you're going to twist the yarn around your hook, which you can do so by inserting your hook further down just to make sure the yarn is fully on there, and then just twist it around back into the normal way that you were holding. And it should look like this. Now what you're going to do is you're going to grab onto your yarn with your hand that is holding the hook, like so, and you can then pull the yarn off of your fingers. And then you can see there are 2 loose strands hanging down. You're going to grab onto those 2 loose strands and pull, and this will form your knot. Then what you're going to do is with those 2 strands, the one is the tail and then the other is the working yarn that's still attached to the skein of yarn. You're going to pull the working yarn, and this will tighten your knot around your hook. And there you go, you have your slip knot. Now if you didn't get it this time, don't worry, I'm going to demonstrate it all again. But this time I won't do a voiceover so that you can just focus on what you're doing. Congratulations! Now you officially know how to make a slip knot. The next step with crocheting is something called chaining, and I'm going to be putting the abbreviations on the screen for every single thing that we're doing from here on out. And this is just to get you familiar with the abbreviations of the terms that you're learning. This will help you so much later on. And just so you know, this end of the yarn is called the tail, while this part of the yarn is called the working yarn. And when you're crocheting, make sure your loops go onto this part of your hook, right here. Because as you can see, towards the actual hook part is smaller, and that is not the size you need for your loops. You need this bigger part of the hook to use as the reference size for your loops. Now go ahead and grab onto your working yarn with your other hand while holding the tail with the hand holding the hook. This will just help keep the loop in place. Now keep in mind this might be a little tricky for you to hold like this, but trust me, it'll get easier with practice. Now we are going to do something called yarn over. This is where you take your working yarn and wrap it around your hook from the back, like so. Okay, so once your yarn is wrapped around your hook, this is where we are going to chain. Depending on how you're holding your hook and your yarn, you may need to readjust how you're holding things. I certainly do. I switch my Slipknot holding hand to my other hand, but basically you're going to take the yarn that you just yarned over and pull that through the loop that is on your hook, like so. And then make sure your loop goes back onto the thicker part of your hook and you just chained one. And I'm going to demonstrate this again, okay? So you're going to yarn over, so wrap around from the back, and then take your hook and from that yarn over, pull that yarn through the loop already on your hook, and that's another chain. So I'm just going to demonstrate from another angle. So from straight on, you wrap your yarn around, and then you take your hook and hook onto that yarn that you wrapped around and pull it through the loop that's already on your hook in order to create a new loop. And then you just do this process over and over and over again for however long you need for whatever project you're making, and this is called chaining. And you can chain however much you want right now because we're just practicing. I'm going to end up chaining 12, and I will show you how to properly count how many chains you have. Now when you're going to count how many chains you have, you'll see that each chain kind of looks like a V. So each V is one chain. And so I will show you closer what that looks like. So this first one, you can kind of see either side of it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you do not count the loop around your hook. That does not count as a chain. So I only have 9 chains and I want 12. So I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3 more to get to 12. And then I always like to double check my work, so I'm going to count again. So this one right here is 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And again, we do not count the one on the hook. And there you go. Now you know how to make a slip knot and how to chain, and those are the 2 basics you need to start off most projects. Now your chain does not count as your first row, it's simply your foundation. So the next step will be crocheting the first row. And we will be doing something called a single crochet for the first row, and before we even get started, we need to chain 1 more in our foundation chain. So go ahead and yarn over and chain 1 more so that you have 13. And this just allows the yarn to loop around into our first row. So it's normal to chain a few extra than you actually need. Then you're going to want to skip this first chain away from your hook and go into the second chain right here. So once you know which chain you're going to crochet into, you're going to look at the V part of it and you're only going to crochet into the one side of it. So as you can see here, it's a V and you're only going to crochet into the top loop of it, which I will show you right here. You're just going to insert into that one end of that V. Then you're going to take your working yarn and you are going to yarn over your hook just like we did with the chaining. And then at this point, you should have 3 strands of yarn wrapped around your hook. So 1, 2, and then 3, the yarn over. Should all be around your hook right now. Then you are just going to pull through that very first loop, and that is it, so that you only have 2 loops around your hook. Now the next part, you are going to yarn over again, and then pull through both of those loops on your hook. And there you go. You now have just created your very first stitch, and this is called a single crochet. And then you're just going to repeat this process of single crocheting into every single chain along the row. So as you can see here, I go into the next loop, the next chain, and then I yarn over and I pull that loop up through the first loop, and then I yarn over again and I pull that loop through the 2 loops on my hook. And that is a single crochet. And I'm just going to do this all the way down the row. You can do it along with me. And when you insert your hook into the chain, and yarn over and pull that first yarn over through the first loop. This is something called pulling up a loop. You will hear this referenced a lot. Pulling up a loop simply means entering into your next stitch, or in this case a chain, yarning over and pulling that yarn over through the stitch or the chain. And then when you finish putting a single crochet in your last chain, this is what your project should look like. And I'm just going to count to make sure I do in fact have 12 stitches, and I do, and so that last one was the 12th stitch. And what I'm going to do is take a stitch marker and put it into that stitch, and I strongly encourage you to do the same because it's very easy to get confused on the next row what your last stitch is. And technically I should have put the stitch marker on that stitch right when I made it, I just forgot, but it also works counting backwards to make sure which one is the last one. So there you can see I'm putting my stitch marker on, and this will just make it easier for me to crochet the next row. And then as always, double check you have the right number because you'd rather be safe than sorry, and I do, I have 12 stitches. So now in order to start your next row, we are going to chain 1. So go ahead and take your working yarn, yarn over, and pull that through the loop on your hook. And then you are going to turn your work. You are always going to be working toward the left as a right-handed crocheter. I'm sorry lefties, this doesn't pertain to you. So in order to crochet the second row of single crochets, you're going to skip that first chain away from your hook and you're going to go into the second chain, this V right here. But this time, you're going to go entirely under the V, getting both parts of the V instead of just the one. So you're going to enter in, make sure both parts of the V around your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over again and pull through both loops. I'll demonstrate twice more from different angles. So here you can kind of see a little gap in that stitch. That's where you're going to enter your hook. Make sure the entire V is on your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through both loops. Now a view from the top. This V is the stitch you're going to enter into, and you're going to enter below that V, getting either side of the V, and then you're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through both loops. And then you're just going to continue this process all the way down, and this will be your second row of single crochets completed. And then when you reach the stitch with the stitch marker on it, you can go ahead and remove your stitch marker so that you can crochet into that stitch. And I realized at this point that I forgot to put a stitch marker on in the very beginning again. So I apologize for this, but we can again just count backwards to where the 12th stitch is, and that's where we put our stitch marker. Luckily, since this is just practice, it's not that big of a deal, but I highly recommend getting into the habit of putting a stitch marker onto the very first stitch you crochet, because for bigger projects, it's not going to be as easy to just count backwards. So now this is what your project should look like so far. But now we are going to learn a new stitch called a half double crochet. And this is the next size up from a single crochet. And so in order to start the row for half double crochets, it's the same way for single crochets. You are just going to yarn over and chain 1. And then after chaining 1, you are going to turn your work. Now, in order to start your half double crochet, you're going to do basically the same thing as a single crochet. So you'll look at your work, you will skip the first chain away from the hook and enter into the second chain. But before going in, you are going to yarn over. So go ahead and yarn over right now, and then enter into that first stitch that is along with all the others, so not the first chain away from the hook, but the first stitch that's actually part of the project. So that should be 2 away from your hook right there. And you're going to do just like you did for all the single crochets, go into the V entirely so that you have both parts of the V on your hook. So you should have 2 loops, the V, and then you're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, and then you should have 3 loops on your hook. So 1, 2, 3, and then you are going to yarn over again and pull that yarn over through all 3 of the loops that was on your hook. And then we are going to go ahead and add a stitch marker to that very first stitch that you just made in order to make it easier for the row after this to know which is the last stitch. So go ahead and add your stitch marker. And now you have officially made your first half double crochet. So let's continue. In order to make the next half double crochet, you will yarn over again, so that now you have 2 loops around your hook. And then you are going to go into the very next stitch. So that open stitch, that V, you are going to insert it just like we've been doing this entire time. So you're going to go in, you are going to yarn over again. You're going to pull that yarn over through your project, through the V, so that you have 3 loops on your hook, 1, 2, 3, and then you are going to yarn over again and pull that through all 3 of your loops. And then I will explain one more time just to make sure you definitely understand. So go ahead and yarn over, enter into that next V in your project, yarn over again, and pull that yarn over through the V, and then make sure you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over again, and pull that yarn over through the 3 loops that were on your hook. And then you're just going to repeat this process all the way down until you reach your stitch marker, since that stitch marker is in the very last stitch in the row, and that's a full row of half double crochets. And then as always, when you reach the next stitch being the one with the stitch marker, you can go ahead and remove your stitch marker and insert your very last half double crochet into the row. Okay, and then to start the next row of half double crochets, you're just going to yarn over and chain 1 and then turn your work. And then you are just going to repeat the process that we've been doing this whole time. So you are going to skip the first chain away from your hook and go into that second one, and you are going to yarn over, insert into the project, into that very first V, so not that one, sorry, that one, so the second V I suppose, insert into it, yarn over again, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull that through all 3 loops. And then you are of course, like always, going to add your stitch marker onto that very first stitch. Eventually you'll get good enough where you won't be needing stitch markers as often, but definitely always use stitch markers as a beginner, or else you will likely start missing stitches and your projects will look kind of funky. So just continue crocheting this row, doing half double crochets until you get to the end, and then we will start on the next stitch. Okay, now that we have finished our 2 rows of half double crochets, we are going to learn the next stitch size up, which is called a double crochet. So you're going to yarn over and chain 1, and this time you're going to yarn over again and chain a second chain for the double crochet. And then go ahead and turn your work. And in order to start a double crochet, it's going to be fairly similar to a half double crochet. So you are going to yarn over, and this time you're going to skip that first chain, that second chain, and go into the third one away from your hook. Okay, so instead of just skipping 1, you're skipping 2. So go ahead and insert into that third V away from your hook, yarn over, and pull up that loop, and you should have 3 loops on your hook, just like the half double crochet. But this time you're only going to go through these first 2 loops. So yarn over and pull that yarn over only through the first 2 loops. So 1, 2, so that you have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over again and pull that yarn over through those 2 loops. And that is your double crochet. And so that very top V away from your hook, that is the top of your stitch. So go ahead and put a stitch marker in it, and we are going to continue double crochets all the way down the row. So yarn over, insert into the next V right here, yarn over again, pull up a loop so that you have 3 loops on your hook, and then yarn over again, pull through those first 2 loops so that you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over again, and pull through those last 2 loops. And then I'll explain one more time. So yarn over, insert into the next stitch, the next V, just like we've been doing this whole time, yarn over again, and pull that loop up through your project so that you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over again, and pull through the last 2 loops on your hook. So you should only have 1 remaining loop on your hook by the end of your double crochet stitch, and then you're just going to continue this all the way down the row. And then of course, like always, we will create a second row of double crochets just to make sure that we get good practice on them. Okay, and then when you complete your final double crochet, you're just going to yarn over and chain 1, and then yarn over again and chain 2, and then go ahead and turn your work. And then we are going to skip these first 2 chains and go into that third V away from your hook. And so yarn over, enter into that stitch, yarn over again, pull up the loop, yarn over again, pull through your first 2 loops, and then yarn over again and pull through your last 2 loops. And then I will explain one more time. So you're going to go into the next stitch, so not that one, but the next stitch, and then insert it, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, and pull through the last 2 loops. And you are just going to continue this process all the way down the row, just like we've been doing. Don't be dumb like me. Remember to put a stitch marker on your very first stitch. I've been doing terrible with remembering that this video, and I truly do apologize. So go ahead and finish off this row, and I will teach you the next biggest stitch. Okay, and now that we have finished off our double crochet row, the next stitch I'm going to teach you is called the triple crochet. So go ahead and yarn over, chain 1, chain 2, and then chain 3 for the triple crochet, and go ahead and turn your work. And you're going to skip the first 3 V's away from your hook, so 1, 2, 3, and go into that 4th one away from it. And instead of just yarning over once, you are going to yarn over twice for this stitch. So 1, 2, 3 loops should be around your hook before you insert it into the project. And now you are going to insert it into the first top of the double crochet stitch right here, yarn over, pull up a loop. So you should have 4 loops total on your hook. Yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the next 2 loops, and then yarn over again and pull through the last 2 loops. And then I will of course show you again, but first put a stitch marker in the very top of the stitch right here, just like always. And then you are going to yarn over once, yarn over twice, insert into the next stitch of your project. Yarn over again and pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the next 2 loops, and then finally yarn over again and pull through your last 2 loops. And then, like always, you're just going to continue this all the way down your project until you get to the very last stitch. And then go ahead and finish off your last stitch, and then in order to start the next row, you're going to yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, chain 2, and yarn over and chain 3, and then go ahead and turn your work. And then I will explain again how to do it. So yarn over once, yarn over twice, and then go into the stitch that is 1, 2, 3, 4 V's away from your hook. So insert it, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the second 2 loops, and then yarn over again and pull through the last 2 loops. Now, and of course, add your stitch marker to the very top of the stitch right here, the V that is 1 away from your hook. Now this stitch can either be called a triple crochet or a treble crochet, and to be honest, it's not really used too often, so don't worry about perfecting this stitch, or if you're having trouble with it. I mean, clearly I am too, because I have only used the stitch for one project that I can remember. So honestly, the most common stitches that I see are single crochets, half double crochets, and double crochets, which you've already learned. And then once you complete this row of triple crochets, I'm also going to teach you something called a slip stitch. And now a slip stitch is technically smaller than a single crochet, but it's a little bit trickier to see the stitches in it. So I wanted you to get practice with stitches that are easier to see and easier to create before we get into the slip stitch. So go ahead and finish this row of triple crochets, and then we will move on to that next stitch. Okay, so then just go ahead and finish off your last triple crochet and go ahead and admire your work so far. This is roughly what it should look like. Don't fret if it looks a little bit wonkier than mine. You're the beginner. It should look not perfect. So here you can see the first 2 rows of single crochets, and then the next 2 rows of half double crochets, and then after that you have, right here's the half double crochets, then you have the double crochets, and you can see the difference between the tightness of each stitch. So single crochets are tighter, half double crochets are a little bit looser, double crochets, there start to be slight gaps between them, and then obviously at the very top your triple crochets have pretty large gaps between them. So that just kind of gives you an idea the benefits of all these stitches. So now the next one, a slip stitch. Many people do not like them, but they can be very beneficial. So go ahead and yarn over and chain 1. Don't do what I did. Keep your yarn on your hook. Yarn over, chain 1, and turn your work. And so for a slip stitch, you are going to enter into the V that is 2 away from your hook. So go ahead and enter into the V. You're going to yarn over again and pull up the loop similar to a single crochet, but now you're going to pull the first loop on your hook through the second one that's on your hook, like so. So I will show you again. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then with that loop you just yarned over and pulled through, you're going to pull through the other loop on your hook. And then you are just going to continue this all the way down the project. So insert, yarn over, pull the loop up, and then pull that through the loop already on your hook. And that is a slip stitch. And if you forgot to add your stitch marker like I did, go ahead and count your stitches back to the very first one and add your stitch marker. Try not to forget like I did, try and add it to your first one right away. And then go ahead and completely finish off your last stitch in the row, your last slip stitch. Okay, and then when you complete your row, yarn over, chain 1, and turn your work. And now this is where you can see that it can be a little confusing where your stitches are, because there are V's on the top right here, and I'm counting just to make sure I have the right amount. And then there are also V's on the side. Make sure you're going in through the top. So go 1 away from your hook, and then insert into the V entirely, yarn over, pull up a loop, and pull that through the loop already on your hook. And now add your stitch marker in the very beginning, and you are just going to continue slip stitching all the way down, and just make sure that you're definitely going in through the top of the stitch and not the side of the stitch. It's very easy to get them mixed up. So see here, this is the side. You're just going to go in through the top right here. Now, many people don't like slip stitches because of the fact that they're so small, so they take forever to crochet. So this is similar to the treble/triple crochet. If you're really struggling with this, don't fret over it. Come back to it later. Just work on creating projects that don't use slip stitches so that you can perfect the other ones. And then when you feel confident with those, it'll be easier to do these ones that you find really difficult right now. So go ahead and finish off your last slip stitch, and we are finished with crocheting the stitches. And now I'm going to show you different variations of how to crochet with these stitches that are pretty common in projects. So to be in the same place as me, I just undid all my work until I only had my 2 rows of single crochets, and I'm going to teach you something called the back loop only. So go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work just like we would to start a new row. And the back loop only is part of the V, so go 1 V, 2 V's away from your hook, so this one right here. And rather than going in from the side, you're going to go in from the top. So you see the V here, how there's kind of space in between the 2 sides of the V. You are going to go into that space in the middle and only go through that back part of the loop, so called back loop only. Then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through your 2 loops. So that's just a single crochet. You should be familiar with that. So go into the next stitch. You're going to go in through the top, that portion of the V, that front loop, that back loop. Going to go in the middle of those 2 parts and hook on only that back loop onto your hook. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through your 2 loops. Then just continue this all the way down where you go in through the top, through the middle, and only that back half of the V, and this is just the back loop only. And you'll see this pretty often in projects. It's pretty common in things like sweaters and different articles of clothing because it creates a sort of stretch for the yarn that you don't typically get. So this is definitely good to know. And you can do it with any stitch, so you can do half double crochets in the back loop only, double crochets in the back loop only. I'm just showing single crochets just because it's the easiest, smallest stitch. And of course, here I go adding my stitch marker to the very first stitch because I forgot to do that in the beginning. I am so sorry. I've been doing terrible with that. But now you're going to chain one and turn your work. And we're going to continue doing single crochets, but this time we're going to do them in the front loop only. So you're going to enter from the side rather than the top and kind of go up so that it's only that first part of the V that's around your hook. Then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through 2 loops. So again, from the side right here, you're just gonna go up through the middle between the 2 loops of the V like that, and then yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through 2 loops. Now this would be called front loop only. Front loop only is not as common as back loop only, so if there's one that you want to be better at, I recommend back loop only. But both are pretty good to know because you will see both in projects. So go ahead and practice that. And if you want, go ahead and practice it with different stitches. So not just single crochets, but half double crochets and double crochets as well, just to get familiar with all of those. And then when you finish that, you can go ahead and take apart your project because I'm going to show you how to crochet the very first rows that I didn't show you yet. So half double crochet, triple crochet, and slip stitch. So I'm just going to chain 10 here, so you can go ahead and chain whatever length you want or go ahead and chain 10 as well. Okay, so now that I have my 10, we are going to chain one more for the half double crochet. And just like the single crochet, you are going to skip the first chain away from your hook, so skip that one and go into the second one right here. Then you're just going to yarn over, and then again, don't go into the first one away from your hook, go into the second one. So not that one, but that one right here. So you're going to enter into the one side of the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over again, and pull through all 3 loops. So at this point, you should already know how to do a half double crochet. I just wanted to teach you how to start it in the very beginning. It's pretty similar to the single crochet where you chain 1 extra and then skip the first chain away from your hook and start crocheting into the second chain. And then you just continue putting half double crochets into every single chain all the way until you reach the very beginning. And then you should know how to start the next row. So the next one I'm going to show you is the double crochet. And so for the double crochet, I have my chain 10 right here. I'm just counting it to make sure that it is actually 10, and it is. And once you get the amount you want, you are just going to chain 1 extra and then chain 2. So if you wanted 10 rows for your project, you're going to chain 12. And then you're going to skip that first chain, skip that second chain, and go into the third chain right here. So yarn over, and again, skip 1, skip 2, and go into the third one right here. And go into the side, just like always. Then yarn over again, pull up the loop, yarn over, make sure there are 3 loops on your hook, yarn over again, pull through your first 2 loops, yarn over again, and pull through your final 2 loops. And then for this, you would add a stitch marker to that very top stitch right here. So that one's a little bit different than your half double crochet and your single crochet because you are chaining 2 extra and then skipping 2 chains and working into the third chain away from your hook. So once you feel comfortable with that, you will crochet all the way down the row, just like how you would any other stitch. And now I'm going to teach you how to do it with triple crochet. So for triple crochet, You are going to do the same exact thing, chain the amount you want. So for me, I chained 10, and here I am just double checking that it's definitely 10, and it is. And so then I'm going to chain 1 extra, 2 extra, and then 3 extra. And then you are going to skip the first, second, third, and go into the 4th chain away from your hook. So you go into yarn over once, yarn over again, and skip 1, 2, 3, and go into that 4th one. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop, yarn over again, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over again, pull through the next 2 loops, and then yarn over again and pull through the last 2 loops. And that very top is where you'd want to add a stitch marker, and you would just continue this on like all the other ones. And the difference with the triple crochet is that you chain 3 extra instead of just 1 or 2 extra. And then finally, I'm going to show you how to start a row with a slip stitch. So same thing with a slip stitch, you are just going to chain the amount you want. For me it's 10, and then you are going to chain 1 extra, just like a single crochet or half double crochet. You're going to skip 1 chain and work into that second one away from your hook. So go ahead and insert your hook, yarn over, pull up the loop, and then pull that loop through the first loop on your hook. And then go into the next stitch, the next chain, yarn over, pull up the loop, and pull that loop through the loop already on your hook. And then you would just do this all the way down too. And now for every single one of these, I've shown you how to crochet onto the next row. So for every single one, when you reach the very bottom of your chain, you're either going to chain 1, 2, or 3, whatever stitch you're using, turn your work, and then continue crocheting just like how I showed you earlier in this video. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is how to finish off your project. So in this case, say that this is all you wanted for your project and you were ready to tie off, is what we would call finishing off. You will just take your working yarn and yarn over, and then chain 1 and pull it pretty, give yourself a pretty long loop and kind of tighten it so that you can see the knot toward the base of it tightened right here. And then you are going to want to grab your scissors. You can use any scissors. These are my crocheting scissors that I use, but you can use any scissors that you have. And go ahead and snip off your working end, just like so. And then you will take your hook and pull so that that loop becomes just the another tail. And go ahead and pull on that tail to make sure your knot is tight, and that would be a finished off project. And so the next thing you would have to do is sew in your ends. So you'll want to have yarn needles because they're bigger than, sewing thread needles. And there's not really a particular size you need. I kind of just grab whatever feels right in the moment. And you will put your yarn through the eye of the needle. And then there's not a right or wrong way to sew in your ends, but I'll show you how I do it. It has worked really well for me. I've never had a project come undone. So you'll go ahead and you'll weave it through your stitches. So here I'm going to decide to go in through the side of the stitch and just grab the one side of the loop like so. So I'll go through the side and go up through the middle. And then in my next stitch, I'm going to go through the middle and come out the side. And then the next stitch, I'll go through the side and come up the middle, and then the stitch after that in the middle out through the side, just like so. And again, it doesn't really matter how you weave in your ends. You don't have to do it like this, but I just want to show you anyway, just because a lot of people forget to show this step. And so I do that for about 4 or 5 stitches, and then I go back through the same stitches that I went through. So here I'm just going to go back through where I went, go through the middle and down, go through the side and up, through the middle and down again in the next one until I reach, I don't go all the way to the end, I go until like one away from the end, and then I just snip off the last bit of my tail right here, and then that side of the project is completely complete. And then I would just do the same thing for this tail here, and that is how you finish off your project. And then here are just a bunch of the abbreviations that I taught you. You can go ahead and feel free to screenshot this. You can refer it later on when you're crocheting. So I hope this helped you. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed this and if it helped you, I would really appreciate if you liked and subscribed so that I'm able to make more of these videos for you guys. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop a comment down below. I will happily reply to the best of my ability. And if there's anything you want me to demonstrate that I didn't show in this video or that you need more demonstration of, feel free to let me know in the comments and I will start working on those videos for you guys. Thank you so much for watching.